This next design is a simple asymmetrical peony design. I'll be using my half Verona from the Face Painting Hub, and I'll be using for the flowers my Ulysses from Face Paints Australia again. We'll be focusing on good placement and flow for this design. We can achieve this by following the focal points. We'll have 3 flowers sitting on top of the eyebrow and 3 flowers underneath the eye. Our 2 main flowers will be sitting opposite on a diagonal to each other. With peonies, I like to start inside and work out. To create this closed shape, we paint a series of 4 or 5 different shaped petals around in a messy circle, so the white tip of the brush stays in the centre. And again, with all of my petals, I'm wiggling the brush up and down slowly to create that depth that we're looking for. Making sure to keep gaps in between each petal, and the messier the circle is, the better it looks. Sometimes if the petals are too tight or too neat, that's when it starts to look a little like a cabbage. With this design, I'll be painting one side and then the other. This helps to keep the balance. I'm also aiming to keep this 3 set of flowers sitting on the cheekbone and curving around to point towards the inner focal point of the eye. This peony is a slightly different perspective. It's more side-on, so I'll be filling in the bottom with the darker colour, leaving the top just white. Now that we have the balance with the 2 main flowers, we can add in the others. These ones are a little bit easier as they're not a full flower, as if the other 2 flowers are sitting underneath the main flower. The 3rd flower on this side will be facing down. So this time, as I create the inner circle, I'll be filling in the dark blue on the top instead of the bottom. And to close this small flower, I'm just doing a little line. I'm not doing a petal here. The last 2 flowers on this side will also be facing up. So I'll be filling in the dark on the bottom and creating just 1 or 2 petals. Again, the top petal is just a line. This one's sitting a little bit higher around the cheekbone, and the 3rd one is even smaller, just creating a very small petal shape and filling in the bottom again. So you can see here the balance is quite good. And now we can start to add in the petals around the outside. With the petals, I like to keep mine quite loose to avoid them looking like cabbages. As you can see, I'm holding the brush quite loose in my fingers, and my fingers aren't too close to the tip of the brush. This just helps to avoid the petals looking too stiff. The smaller flowers only need 1 or 2 petals, whereas the bigger one has 2 or 3 either side. And if I see any gaps, I can just add another petal in there. I'm just trying to keep the design free and flowy. On the 3rd flower, 1 or 2 petals are added at the bottom and just 1 to the top. Just filling in the gaps. Starting with the largest peony on this side, I paint a series of 4 to 5 petals either side. And you can see that I've painted over the top of one of the flowers. This just gives it a little bit more of a 3D effect. Each petal follows the previous one and frames the flower. With the second flower, again, we only need to add 2 or 3 small petals, and the same on the other one. The next step is adding in the center petals. These ones are only quite small as we're really just filling in the gaps here. We add 3 or 4 in between the main base shape and the outer petals. And the flower's starting to come together a little bit more now. I personally prefer to do my peonies in separate steps like this because it just allows each layer to dry before I do the next one. You can see how my strokes are very small here. It's barely a petal. We're just adding in a very small line to create more depth. To fill in the center of the flowers, you can just reload the brush as it is, but I have reloaded the brush with the dark at the tip this time. This just allows me to fill in the gaps with the darker color in between each petal here. I always take my time with this step, just being careful not to go over the white of the center of the flower. Filling in the center of the flowers is fairly self-explanatory, so I'll just fast forward this so that we can move on to the next step. I've loaded up my brush now with my custom green leaf color, and this is the step where we are able to create more flow and movement with our design. I always start with the leaf that creates the direction of our flow. So with this leaf, picture an imaginary line which joins our design together. The second leaf will overlap the first leaf. This just creates more depth to the design, and it's pointing slightly up. I can now add in 2 half leaves as if they're sitting underneath the flower. To create this, I'm lifting the heel of the brush up and I'm only using just the tip of the brush. And you can fill in any gaps with the heel of the brush once you've finished. Adding in the leaves on the side of the face, I'm trying to create the effect that the leaves are falling down around the face gently. I start by adding the first leaf pointing down. The second leaf is pointing to the outer corner of the eye focal point, and one facing slightly outwards before I add in the last leaf, which is a separate leaf by itself, giving the effect that it's fallen off the leaf branch. Again, I just feel that this creates a little bit more movement with our design. Adding in the vines next, again, creates more movement and more flow to our design. This is another way to draw the eyes toward the focal points on the face. I'm making sure that the tip of the leaves are pointing towards each other. Adding in another leaf here. Again, this is just a half leaf, so lifting off the heel of the brush